We have not talked about the George Pickens to Dallas trade yet. Let's put a bow on that, and let's get to it. From Brandon Laurie, sorry, and his handle is Brandon is right, but it's WRITE. So a little creative wordplay there. From the outside, it looked like George Pickens was a problem for the Steelers, but did you ever get the sense that he was an issue inside the locker room? Is it perception? Is this a case of perception versus fan reality?
It's reality.
Fan perception versus reality. Okay.
It's reality. I mean, the reality is, I don't think he's a bad-hearted guy, but his frustration with his role in the offense bubbled over at times. His frustration on the direction of the offense bubbled over at times. His professionalism was in question, and like showing up to meetings, being at meetings on time when that frustration was in play. There were just it just felt like there was always a million things going on with him. And that part of it, I think, really gets to a boiling point when you're starting to talk about whether or not you want to retain him long-term. And so I think the question for the Steelers became, okay, so we've had all these problems now. His role in the offense, the direction of the offense, his frustration, and he is a tough competitor, but and he wants to be great, but that's showing up in so many different ways. And I think their question was, okay, like if we now put that in a contract year, okay, with DK Metcalf coming in, who, by the way, isn't just also a receiver, but plays the same receiver spot as he does, the X spot. So how are you going to manage those two? If you take all of this into account, like what is this going to look like in October or November? Like if George Pickens goes through a 3-week stretch where he has 5 catches, what is that going to look like? And what's that going to mean for whoever our quarterback is? And by the way, like DK, like I think DK is a good guy, but DK like had like an issue with his quarterback in Seattle too, So like he has like a temper and he can have his own thoughts too. I think in retrospect, and I didn't say this at the time, but I think in retrospect now, maybe Metcalf and Pickens was never meant to be,
Right.
And I think the amount of issues that were there, again, like this isn't criminal stuff or anything like that, but it was, hey, if this is going to, what's the payoff here when we have a guy who's just like him now in DK Metcalf, a lot of similarities just from a playing style standpoint, right? What's this going to, what's the positive to having Pickens on the roster right now versus the risk in keeping him on into a contract year? And I think it came to a point where it's like, I mean, if Troy Brown had this great, you remember Troy Brown from the Patriots, and I did TV with him for a bunch of years, and he had this great saying. It was, money only makes you more of what you already are.
Right.
And so it was either, do we pay him now and reinforce everything that's happened the last 3 years? Do we let him go into a contract year and risk it boiling over? Or do we just go get the 3rd round pick we might get in a comp pick anyway if we let him go after the year? And I think they thought enough of Calvin Austin, who has developed nicely for them, and maybe they get a little more out of Roman Wilson in year 2. Having DK Metcalf gave them the flexibility to move on now.
I think we should clear up one thing, which is that, there's this idea of the diva receiver and, they get mad when they don't get the ball. Here's my thought. It's probably omnipresent because receiver is really the only position where you can do a bunch of work on a play and do your job and not get recognized whatsoever. Right. Yeah. And so I think that frustration builds, and I think that's natural for the position. Yeah. And George Pickens in particular had to go from Kenny Pickett to Mitch Trubisky to Russell Wilson, and Pickens and Wilson are not the same kind of player. Whereas Dak Prescott, I feel like if you were to make an ideal back shoulder fade dream quarterback for George Pickens in a lab, it's Dak Prescott, right? And so all of a sudden some of this can disappear. And, I think part of it is like Antonio Brown is certainly on a different universe. But a lot of these things
A
are
funny way
just,
of putting it.
yeah, a lot of these things are just natural part of football, right?
Yeah.
Where receivers are just going to be pissed
Mhm.
off more often because they're asked to basically run a full Olympic speed wind sprint, and then you may or may not get the ball depending on whether your quarterback's on
And
his
that
game or not.
Yeah, and that part of it, like, that makes that position so different than any other. I mean, maybe different than any position in sports where you can do everything right and everything's still out of your control. And
100%.
for so many of these guys, and this part happens in other positions too, but it's like if you're good enough to play in the NFL at that level and be a top 100 draft pick, you've probably had a lot of things catered to you in high
Right.
school and college, right? Like there was probably a lot built around you, and now you're going into a situation where like the ball's just not going to come your way some days, and there's going to be times when, unless you are just this superhuman talent that like we have to get him the ball, you're going to be a decoy on some Sundays.
Right.
And I mean, you think about this, like even a decent running back might get the ball like 8 to 10 times in a game, right? A great receiver is right around that number. So that's the difference.
Right. Because you can go around. Let me just take a spin through very quickly before we wrap things up. I'm going to do my favorite Google search, which is for NFL standings. My Google
Oh, I
Analytics
have
said
them up
like
already.
I
Yeah.
go to this page more than any
I, I,
other.
I actually I pulled them up just to make sure Dallas had a losing record.
Okay, so let's go
So I have them
through
up. Yeah.
every team, and you can tell me in the last 5 years, did they have a quote unquote wide receiver issue? Buffalo
Okay.
Bills, yes, they did. Stephon Diggs. Miami Dolphins, yes, they did. Tyreek Hill. New York Jets, yes, they did. I mean, Garrett Wilson, and then the
Yeah.
addition of Devontae Adams, and then was Garrett Wilson going to get the targets?
Sure.
Was Mike Williams on the same page as Aaron Rodgers? Yes, they did. New England Patriots, probably not, but they just don't.
Well, this is because they were so bad at that position.
Yeah, they just don't really have good wide
Yeah.
receivers.
Yeah.
Baltimore Ravens,
Not really.
was there a target? Okay, so that's two. Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously,
Yeah.
that we just talked about. The
Bengals,
Bengals,
yes.
yes.
Great
The
players, but yes.
the Browns,
What was the time frame we're working with here?
like the last 5 years.
Beckham.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay, so we got that one. The Houston Texans,
Hopkins.
yeah.
Yeah. They had to trade him.
The Colts.
Um,
I don't
no, I don't think
like. I
so.
think it would. I
No.
mean, the Colts have decent receivers, but it's sort of it's
No.
like a
Yeah.
largely anonymous
Yeah.
part of their
Yeah.
uh, Jaguars.
No.
Jaguars, no. Titans. Calvin Ridley last year complained about targets.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. The Chiefs, not really.
I mean, they did trade Tyreek though.
They did. They did trade Tyreek Hill. That's true. The Chargers.
Not
I don't
really.
know if like I don't know if there's like a lot of infighting with like
I mean,
Keenan Allen and
Keenan
Mike
Allen was a
Williams
pro
and
for them. I think Mike Williams is fine. I think that'd
yeah,
be
I think that was
unfair.
okay.
Yeah.
The Broncos, I don't remember really
Not
anything
really. I
there.
mean, how
The
far back
Raiders,
would you go? No.
the
Raiders.
Eagles, the Eagles. Yeah,
Yes.
I skipped over the Raiders. They
Yeah.
they don't have any good wide receivers.
Eagles. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. AJ Brown has not been. I mean, he's fine. He's a great player, but the reading the book on the sideline thing was interesting.
I mean, whatever. We don't have to go through the rest of these, but like, yeah, 49ers,
This sort of
absolutely.
shows you, yeah.
Seahawks, absolutely. Falcons, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what all I'm saying is Packers, absolutely. So all I'm saying is it's not. This is kind of why I think that taking.
So are you saying it's the price of doing business then?
It's the price of having good wide receivers.
Yeah.
They're going to want the ball. I mean, the
And
Giants,
like
Malik Neighbors.
but isn't that what's interesting about Dallas now is like we're talking about like part of the Steelers' logic was how is it going to be hard to manage them through a contract year? Now the Cowboys have like one of the highest volume receivers in the league playing opposite him.
Right. And I think what the Cowboys' advantage is that they can look at Pickens and say, you play in the orchestra and then you get paid, you're the squeaky violin and you end up in I mean, what, Jamison Crowder territory where you're just kind of a year by year mercenary and you hope for 60 balls a season, you know?
Man, he's just so talented too. Like
It's
that's the
really
other thing.
good.
That's a shame of it. Is like I remember um after he was a freshman, I think, like I had him on some list. I remember we did that thing about like we had to predict the decade. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And
Yes.
like I wanted to have like a curveball or two. So one curveball I had in there was George Pickens as being like the leading receiver for. I mean, it's like looks crazy now and probably was stupid of me, but like I had George Pickens as like the I don't know the leader for the decade in total yards or in receiving yards or something like that. And after I wrote that, I remember I had somebody who coached in college say, "Be really careful about that." He's like, "I'm just not sure." And it was someone who, I mean, I would just say, like, had known him as a recruit, and there was a lot going on even then, you know. And so, like, I it'll be interesting to see the way this works in Dallas, and I think it's a good first test for Shoddy too, because I think he's going to build a really good culture. Anybody who spent 5 minutes around him can, you know, like he's going to be able to build something like a good, positive environment, and it's going to be easy for everybody to hold hands and sing songs in May and June. That's harder to maintain when you get to October and you've lost a couple of games in a row, and this receiver has 3 catches in 2 weeks. So it'll be a good test of what they're able to build there too.